The mess hall was tense, the air heavy with the scent of over-brewed coffee and sweat-soaked uniforms. A storm had rolled in overnight, turning the ocean outside into a churning beast, waves hammering the steel hull of the carrier with relentless fury. Inside, though, the storm that was about to break wasn't made of wind and water, it was made of silence, waiting for someone to answer a question no one wanted to hear. The SEAL captain's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. "Any combat pilots here?" The room froze. Forks clinked against trays. Men and women, soldiers hardened by years of training, looked at each other with unease. The mission briefing had been clear. The pilot slated to fly the extraction bird had been injured in the chaos of last night's skirmish. Without a skilled pilot, the team of stranded Marines pinned down in the mountains had no chance. The captain scanned the room, his jaw tight, his eyes carrying the weight of responsibility that only leaders know. Seconds stretched like hours, and then, quietly, almost reluctantly, a chair scraped back. A young woman stood. Her posture was steady, her eyes unwavering, though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. She wore no flight patch on her sleeve, no insignia that would have marked her as a pilot. To most, she was just another logistics officer, someone who kept the gears turning behind the scenes. But when she spoke, her voice carried a gravity that silenced the whispers. "I can fly." Every head turned. The captain's eyes narrowed. You're not listed as aircrew." "No, sir," she admitted. "Not anymore." The words lingered in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Whitmore, though most of the crew only knew her as Whit. She was the quiet type, the one who volunteered for late shifts so others could rest, the one who remembered birthdays with hand-scribbled notes slipped under cabin doors. Few knew much about her past, and she never offered details. But now, with lives hanging in the balance, the truth began to surface. "I flew F-18s with the 67th Squadron," she said, her voice steady, though her eyes seemed to drift to memories only she could see. "Combat tours over Kandahar and Helmand. Logged over 900 hours before I transferred." The captain's expression flickered. The SEALs around him shifted uncomfortably. The room seemed to breathe as one, waiting for his verdict. "You transferred," he pressed. Sarah nodded. "Medical discharge from active flight. Shrapnel injury to my leg. I was told I'd never handle the strain again." Her jaw tightened. "But I've kept current in simulators. I can fly that bird." The silence stretched again, but this time it was filled with something heavier. Disbelief, skepticism, and, slowly, hope. The captain studied her, reading the truth etched in her face. She wasn't boasting. She wasn't desperate for recognition. She was simply stepping forward because no one else would. Because lives depended on it. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. "Gear up. You've got the stick." The room erupted. Not with cheers, but with murmurs of shock, questions hanging in the air. Could she really do it? Would she hold up under fire? Was this courage, or recklessness? But Sarah didn't hear them. She was already moving, every step a quiet rebellion against the doubts that had shadowed her for years. The hangar bay buzzed with urgency. Mechanics scrambled, fueling the Black Hawk and arming its hardpoints. The SEAL team, 12 strong, checked gear and weapons with a grim focus. Sarah approached the bird, running her hand along the fuselage like she was greeting an old friend. She hadn't been in the cockpit of a real aircraft in years, but the smell of jet fuel, the hum of hydraulics, the metallic tang of oil and steel, it all came rushing back, muscle memory stirring like embers reigniting into flame. "Lieutenant," the captain said, stepping beside her. His voice had softened, but his eyes were sharp. "I need to know, are you sure about this?" She turned to him, her expression calm. "Sir, those Marines don't have time for my doubts. They need a pilot. I'm here. That's enough." For the first time that day, the captain allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The flight out was a knife's edge. The storm hadn't passed. Sheets of rain slashed across the windshield, turbulence tossing the Black Hawk like a toy. Sarah's knuckles were white on the controls, but her breathing was steady, her voice calm as she called out headings and adjusted throttle. The SEALs behind her clung to their harnesses, their usual stoicism giving way to wary glances. Yet as the minutes passed, their confidence grew. She wasn't just holding the bird steady, she was coaxing it through the storm, reading the wind like a second language, guiding them with precision that spoke of years in the sky. Halfway through the flight, the captain leaned forward over her shoulder. "You've still got it, Lieutenant." She didn't look back. "I never lost it, sir. Just had to remember." They reached the mountains at dawn. The sun broke through ragged clouds, painting the peaks in bruised gold. Smoke rose from the valley floor below, where the pinned Marines were making their final stand. Gunfire echoed faintly, a reminder that every second counted. Enemy armor closing in, a SEAL reported, peering through binoculars. Sarah's jaw tightened. "We're going in hot." The descent was brutal. RPG fire streaked past them, one rocket detonating close enough to rattle teeth. Sarah jinked the Black Hawk with a violent roll, skimming the ridge line, using the terrain as cover. "Hold on," she barked. The bird swooped into the valley, kicking up dust and debris as she flared for landing. Marines scrambled from cover, wounded slung over shoulders, their faces etched with desperation, and then disbelief as they saw who was flying. "Load up! Load up!" the captain shouted, covering the perimeter with his rifle. The cabin filled with bodies and chaos. The Black Hawk sagged under the weight, rotors straining. "Too heavy," the crew chief warned. Sarah's eyes darted to the wounded, a young Marine with blood soaking his bandages, another barely conscious. She didn't hesitate. "Throw the ammo crates," she ordered. The SEALs balked. "Ma'am, that's half our resupply." "They won't need resupply if they're dead," she snapped. "Get it out." The SEALs exchanged looks, then obeyed. Ammunition tumbled into the dirt as Sarah pulled collective, coaxing every ounce of lift from the straining rotors. Slowly, painfully, the Black Hawk rose. The flight back was worse. Enemy fire trailed them, tracer rounds stitching the air. Twice, Sarah dipped so low that treetops scraped the belly of the bird. Once, she banked hard enough that a wounded Marine nearly slipped free, saved only by a SEAL's desperate grip. But she never wavered. Her voice over the intercom was calm, commanding, almost soothing. It steadied the SEALs, it steadied the Marines, and, most of all, it steadied herself. By the time the carrier came into view through the thinning storm, the cabin was silent, not from fear, but from awe. The landing was rough but safe. As the rotors wound down, the rescued Marines stumbled out, medics rushing to meet them. Some were weeping openly, others clutching Sarah's hand as they passed, murmuring words of thanks. The SEAL captain stood by the ramp, watching it all unfold. His men, hardened, disciplined, rarely shaken, looked at Sarah with something close to reverence. Finally, as she climbed down from the cockpit, the captain stepped forward and snapped a salute. "Lieutenant Whitmore," he said, his voice carrying across the deck, "you didn't just fly today. You saved them, and you reminded all of us what courage looks like." Sarah returned the salute, her eyes glistening though her expression remained composed. "Sir," she said softly, "I just did what needed to be done." That night, the carrier was quieter than usual. In the mess hall, whispers spread of the logistics officer who had once been a combat pilot, who had flown into hell and back when no one else would. The story grew in the telling, as stories do, but the core remained unchanged. She had stood when others hesitated. She had given more than anyone expected. And somewhere in the silence of her cabin, Sarah sat by the porthole, staring out at the dark sea. For the first time in years, her hands didn't shake. She had doubted herself for so long, carried the weight of her scars like chains. But tonight, those chains felt lighter. Because she had remembered, not just who she was, but why she had chosen to serve. And because in the eyes of the men and women she saved, she saw something she thought she had lost forever.